out really quickly, what are some things that you guys do already to build your relationships with your kids that you're working with? Yes, your connect meetings, hopefully. What about asking them about something in their life that's outside of school, or saying hi to them in the hallway? It could be really simple things to just show that you are a person that is going to be a part of their regular routine for the next little while. Ideas coming to mind about how you might build relationship. The games. Yes, that's one of my favorites too. Make it something fun, totally unrelated to whatever you're going to be doing, possibly, just to have a fun, just a fun experience. One thing Amanda mentioned that I specialize in refugee services. So I worked with a lot of kids from refugee backgrounds. And one thing that was really important to me and to them was to make sure I could pronounce their name correctly. Sometimes their names were really challenging for me. So sometimes I made it into a game and had them become the teacher to teach me the proper sounds to make their name correctly. So that was a good relationship building strategy. Carla says she tells a joke of the day. Jessie Ann gets to know their interests. Yep, being visible, out of sight, out of mind goes both ways. Yes, that's so true. So just being an active member in their life, an active person in their life in some way. I did a lot of home visits in my role as a social worker before I joined USBE. So that was another great way to get to know their family outside of the school setting. But it's really important before we try to do any sort of intervention or introduce strategies to kids to have that relationship. They're going to be more willing to respond to your suggestions, or to trust you in the process of de-stressing or trying to regulate when they already have a relationship with you. Other thing that you'll want to do is teach these strategies when they're calm. So it's going to be really hard to introduce new concepts to anybody when they are already escalated and kind of they're more unwilling to maybe try something new when something is already upsetting them. So if you can try to teach some of these strategies to kids when they are already calm, you'll have a lot more success if you can do that. And then something else that I've found that helps is deciding on a cue or some sort of reminder together with the student. So it could be like a hand signal, like a thumbs up or like a wink or something that shows them, okay, it looks like you're getting a little bit dysregulated. I want to help you through that without calling too much attention to it. So asking them what would they be comfortable with. It could even be a silly word like elephant or something, so that they know when they hear that, that means, okay, I'm going to use some of my strategies to try to get into my calm body. Any questions on that kind of, I called it pre-work, but some of those like upfront things that you can do before you jump into teaching strategies. Any questions on those? Okay, so we're going to jump into the coping skills workbook. So the workbook has 4 categories, and we're going to go through each of the categories, and I'm going to give you some tangible tools that you can use with kids. I love that Amanda started with that mindfulness activity, because that is something that is talked about in this as well as a strategy to use to help focus your attention on something. Maybe if you're feeling really stressed, to focus your attention on something else for a short amount of time to kind of regulate yourself. So we'll talk about calming strategies, distraction strategies, physical strategies, and processing strategies. And we're going to practice them ourselves in in this training as well. So you'll get to do some of the work and get to feel what some of these strategies might feel like for kids too. So calming skills are designed to help with relaxation. Distraction skills are designed to distract, obviously, and to keep your attention focused on something else when there's something stressing you out. Physical skills are designed to help rebalance your energy. So either to energize you or to manage excess energy. And we'll talk about two forms of physical skills that can be used. And then processing skills are designed to help work through thoughts and feelings about challenging situations. So some of these strategies might be easier to use with younger kids. Some of those processing ones might have to be adapted to work with younger kids, but we'll talk through some of those adaptations as we go. And it's ideal for a student to have a few favorite strategies in each of these categories. So if a student is really dysregulated, it's going to be really challenging for them to engage in a processing activity because it's likely that the part of their brain that's activated, their amygdala, when they're stressed out or dysregulated, is kind of blocking their prefrontal cortex and not really allowing them to engage in a processing activity. So we would want to have some other strategies to kind of regulate them before we get into the processing strategies. So again, like I said, calming strategies are designed to help with relaxation when faced with stressful or overwhelming situations. One thing that's always brought up when we talk about breathing or when we talk about calming is our breath. Any ideas on why this is always brought up? Why does everybody always talk about breathing? And well, go ahead and unmute or chat, whatever.
I was going to volunteer. I know for me, the second I get stressed out, I stop breathing. Like it's happened at least 4 times this morning. So,
okay, so why is it so important that you breathe, Amanda?
So that my brain actually functions. Because as I saw on my first 2 slides, before I was breathing, I stumbled through my words.
Yes, the breathing kind of helps you continue working through whatever you are needing to get done. Good. Any other ideas? Why is breath so important?
Like breathing is something you just do, right? Your body naturally does it. But when you pay attention to it, then you're like, oh, it really is helpful, mindful, right? It kind of centers you. It brings you to where you are. It brings you to current. And so even just when you said breathing, I noticed my breath and like instantly I felt calm. And not that I was high strung before, but it was just like a nice moment to remember to breathe and to take a deep breath.
Awesome. Thank you. I love, Julia, what you said about it brings us back to right now. So a lot of times when we could become dysregulated or stressed out, we're thinking about something that might happen in the future, or we're worried about something that happened in the past, and we're not in the present moment. So like you said, the breath brings us back to right now in this moment, and that can be really calming. Some other ideas in the chat were that it can be a focus point. It keeps you grounded. It gives you something to concentrate on, like in labor. Yes, good. There is some science related to why breathing is really beneficial, and specifically focusing on breathing and being intentional with your breath. So I'm going to teach just really briefly about our nervous system. So we have two parts of our nervous system that I'm going to touch on. So the first is our autonomic nervous system, or ANS, and that's the part of our body that helps us through a fight, flight, or freeze response. So our heart rate increases, our pupils dilate, our muscles contract, and digestion stops. The purpose of this nervous system is to protect us from danger. So when we are dysregulated for any reason, if we're stressed out about something, it's likely that our autonomic nervous system has activated and we are in a state of stress. Our bodies have a physical reaction to our environment or whatever we are experiencing, whatever is going on in our life. We also have a parasympathetic nervous system, or PNS, and this is our rest and digest system. So this is the part of the body that is activated when we experience relaxation or calming. And this is the exact opposite. So our heart rate drops, our muscles relax, our pupils constrict, and our saliva increases. So when we engage in mindful breathing or purposeful breathing, we activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which has a direct impact on our physical sensations in our body. That's a little bit of science about why breathing is so important. It also introduces more oxygen. Like Amanda said, it gives more oxygen to your brain so that your brain can function, and it opens your capillaries. So these are some common breathing activities that I use with kids, and I've heard a lot of other practitioners use with kids. Do any of these look familiar to you? Have you used any of these in your practice? Anyone have a favorite or a question about any of them? Some of them you might be like, what does that mean?
I'm not familiar with the cute one in the bottom with the excuse me, the image that's the same child 4 different times in the.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
That one is the volcano breath. So this involves a little bit of physical movement as well. It gets the body moving. Amanda, let's do it together. Let's do volcano breath. Okay, so you're gonna start with your hands to your center, and you'll take a deep breath in and out and in. So you could do that over and over for 2 minutes or however long it takes. So I like this one because it, like I said, it activates the body and gets the body engaged. Kids really like any sort of movement that's attached to breathing. It kind of gives them something else to focus on. So I would call this one the volcano breath.
Thank you. I like that.
Yeah. The little ball thing is another favorite. This is the ball that like expands and contracts when you pull it apart. This can help little kids recognize, or even big kids. Some adults don't realize that they breathe from their chest and not their belly. So this can be a good way to kind of show that when you take a deep breath in, your belly can expand. And when you take a deep breath out, your belly can contract. So this can be a really good visual representation or guide for kids to kind of focus on belly breathing. The little stuffed animal one is another good one because they can, when they breathe, they can see the stuffed animal moving up and down with their belly. All right, I'm going to have you guys choose one of these, and we're going to practice for 1 minute. You can choose one of these breathing techniques, and we'll do it for 1 minute for yourself. So while you're breathing and using one of these strategies, try to stay focused on the task. If your mind gets distracted and you start thinking about your to-do list or all the things you have to get done today or something that stressed you out, just say, oh, there's some thoughts, and then just come right back to the activity and focus on your breathing again. So it's okay. Our brain is meant to have thoughts, and that's normal and that's okay. But try to just notice them coming and then say to yourself, I'm going to focus on my breathing right now, and then come back to your breath. So I'll set a timer. We'll do it for 1 minute and then we'll keep going. All right, 1 minute is up. How did that feel for you guys to spend a few minutes just focused on your breath and engaging in one activity at a time? I hope you were able to kind of focus on that one thing. And are you feeling less stressed?
I am. Thank you.
So another component of the calming strategies is mindfulness meditation and yoga. So these are some strategies you can use. I'm trying to find my notes again. They've lost them on my computer. Hold on. There we are. Okay. So these are some strategies you can use when you're thinking about calming mindfulness or meditation. So the activity Amanda shared this morning was a perfect example of that, of mindful walking or mindful seeing or mindful hearing. These are all good strategies to use anywhere that you are, and you don't have to have any special tools or supplies with you. So one of my favorites is focusing in on sounds. And you can do this by stretching your hearing outside of where you are now. So you can start with, what do you hear now in the room? And then try to expand to, what can you hear outside of this room? And then expand to, what can you hear further away? So trying to tune your ear to be hearing beyond what is happening right next to you. Another strategy is a mindful walk. So that's like what Amanda's presentation was, a mindful walk, and then narrowing in on a small little detail on that walk, which is the leaf. So you could do that as well anywhere that you are. You could do it in a city or in the mountains or anywhere. Yoga, again, kids love any sort of engagement of their bodies and moving their bodies. Another one that I love is this imagining your favorite place. So it could be a place that you've never visited or a favorite memory that you have of going somewhere, but really getting in tune with imagining all of the little details about somewhere that you love being. My favorite place would be like in a cozy bed with really fluffy blankets. I would imagine that probably. And then another way to engage mindfulness is to do mindful snacking or a mindful taste. So the picture of the blackberries is just a signal that you could do mindful tasting by examining the food before you eat it with your eyes, looking at it before you eat it, feeling the texture in your fingers. What does the food feel like? You could even smell it, see if there is a scent to the food that you're about to eat. And then when you do taste it, having it sit in your mouth for a minute before you even start chewing it, feel the sensation of it on your tongue and your mouth. You can move it around your mouth with your tongue. And then taking slow, intentional bites to really engage in your senses of tasting that individual piece of food. So it's really effective to engage your senses whenever you're talking about grounding activities or mindfulness activities. If you can engage your five senses in some way, it's really effective to help regulate when you're feeling stressed. And it goes back to the breathing concept. It brings you back to the present moment, what is happening right now, instead of worrying about the future or the past. Questions on these strategies? Okay, let's do one really quick for a minute. We're going to do the focusing on sounds activity. So we'll do this for a minute, just like before. And your task is to stretch your hearing. So try to focus on the sounds that you hear immediately around you, and then see if you can expand your hearing to a little bit further away. And we'll do this for a minute, and then I'll ask you to put some things that you could hear in that minute in the chat when we're all done. So focus on your hearing and your listening for 1 minute and try to focus in on whatever it is that you hear. Ready, begin. right, go ahead and throw some ideas out in the chat about what you were hearing when you were focused on your listening. I heard a vacuum, I think. I have noise canceling headphones in, so I couldn't quite distinguish what it was, but I think I hear vacuuming out there. Freeway noise. Amanda, was that a sound that you were actively aware of before you paid attention, or did you notice it once you started paying attention?
No, only once I started paying attention, which is funny to me because I live close enough. You think I'd like hear it all the time, but I attribute that to growing up by Hill Air Force Base. If you can learn to tune out jets, freeway noise is nothing.
Yes, you tuned it out. Good. Okay. So some other things in the chat: typing, an HVAC system have made you more anxious. Oh no. Clock, a teacher yelling, student chatter, pendulum on clock all the way across the house. Wow. Oh, on the clock. Clock, phone ringing, dog breathing. Did anyone else have that experience that you noticed a sound that you weren't previously aware of? All right, we'll go on to, these ones are my absolute favorite. Grounding activities, I think, is where the magic is. I think this is where regulation starts really happening, is when we can, because these again are engaging our 5 senses. So I love these strategies a lot. So take a glance at some of these that I've listed here. I won't read them all, but if one of them stands out to you and you're like, what does that mean? Or what does that look like? We can talk about it really quickly. So feel free to like just review some of these items and we can talk about some of them. I have to tell you a funny story about my son. So this drink of water one, I have a 3, he's almost 3. So I'm teaching him some regulation strategies. And I always tell him, when you take a drink of something, it helps you to calm down. And last night he was really upset because he fell asleep like 10 minutes before bedtime. And then I had to wake him up and get him ready for bed. And he was really upset. And I said, do you want your juice? And he said, yes. And he took one drink and he said, Mommy, it's helping me calm down. I said, yes, you're right, baby. So really taking a drink of water forces you to take a breath. So I think that's part of the magic of the water, but also the cool sensation, especially if it's cold water, can kind of help like trigger a change of state in your body, a state change in your body to kind of flip on some regulation strategies when you experience a different, like a temperature change. So taking a drink of water, taking a drink of anything really, milk, water, juice, but just taking a second to drink some water, I think is super effective and super easy to do in a school setting too. You can engage the student by saying, let's go take a walk. So they're moving their body, and then let's get a drink of water. And then that can help them slow down, take a breath in order to drink the water. So funny little story about my toddler, but any questions on any of these strategies?
I'm wondering, Tiana, what you might think. I think that drinking of water is probably one of the most effective, but when a kid is so dysregulated, I'm thinking of the kid that can't think of a positive thing, or can't think, doesn't want to look around the room and point something out, or doesn't want to do an activity. They're just kind of in that headspace that's not, very helpful. Anyway, what would be your suggestion of something to help in that situation?
Yes. Oh my gosh, Julia, you just described my toddler also.
This is my 12-year-old, so yeah, okay. I can't say it gets better.
Yeah, I think the planning ahead, having like a cue or like something that's gonna be not super intrusive to them. So not like a lot of talk when they're super dysregulated, but just like a magic word or something that's gonna kind of help them know that they should probably use a calming strategy. And then also when they are calm, having a choice, like having them choose their 3 favorite calming strategies that they really like, and then having some way for them when they are dysregulated to choose one of those choices. So it could be popsicle sticks with like a picture of the calming strategy on it, or a flip book of something that they can kind of peruse their menu of calming strategies and they can choose one. But I think in that moment, the choice is super important. And again, sometimes kiddos just don't want to do whatever is suggested to them when they are dysregulated. And I think that just goes to show that they want some sort of autonomy, and maybe they just want to sit quietly and don't want to be talked to, or I don't know. Does that help, Julia? Kind of giving choice where possible?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that pre-work, it just validates how important teaching in those calm moments, how to be calm when they're not calm.
Yes.
I think that really rang true to me, that we need to do some prep work. So in those moments, it's not a new thing.
Yes. Yeah. If I tell my son, take it, okay, you need to take a deep breath. It looks like you're getting upset. He'll say, no. But if I show any sort of upset feelings, like, oh, I'm so frustrated, he'll say, mommy, take a deep breath. So it's getting through to him that the deep breath can help him. But sometimes he just digs his heels in and is not wanting to do that in the moment. So I think that's okay. But just reinforcing it in the calm moments, I think, would be a good strategy. Lots of things in the chat about you Diet Coke, you caffeine addicts. Mine is Diet Dr. Pepper Heidi. I don't know if you're a diet girl or just regular. All right. I want to spend another minute. I want you guys to choose one of these. Actually, I want to describe. So I have these, mental techniques here, which isn't super clear. So I want to describe that one really quickly. So mental techniques is where you can think of something. You could think of your favorite food, your favorite color, your favorite animal. You could picture people that you care about in your mind. You could say the alphabet slowly. You could remember the words of a song that you love, but those are strategies to engage your brain in some sort of activity that is focused on something specific. So if you're working with a student and you wanted to introduce this, you might say, what's some of your favorite things? And they might list a few things, and you'll say, okay, now I want you to spend a minute, and I would start really small, just a minute, thinking about it in your brain. Just imagine it. And this might not work for super young kids, but at least kindergarten and up, they should be able to have that skill of being able to think about something and then see pictures of it in their brain. So have them think about it for just a minute. And then afterwards, you can have them tell you all about what they saw in their mind, so to kind of engage and reinforce that concept of imagining something in their brain that they really love. And then the physical techniques involves something like running water over your hands, carrying like a small rock in your pocket that can help be like a cue to practice regulation. You can move your body jumping up and down or doing some stretches. And we'll talk about these a little bit later as well. You can make a fist and then release it. It's a really good strategy to help with finishing like a crisis cycle. So when our bodies become escalated, our autonomic nervous system is activated, our fight or flight response is activated, and our bodies tense up, remember? So if we want to get out of that, we need to do some sort of activity to help our bodies to relax. So tightening muscles in our body and then purposefully relaxing them is a great way to kind of trick your brain to recognize and notice that it's okay to relax now. We're in a place where we're safe now. So intentionally tensing your muscles and then relaxing them can train your brain to do that. You could clap and rub your hands together. That can kind of just engage your senses and bring energy to your skin. You could splash water on your face. So those physical techniques are strategies to kind of really engage the sensations on your skin. Progressive muscle relaxation is similar to that, like tensing your muscles and then relaxing them, but you would do that from your head to your toe. So you would focus on all parts of your body that you can tense and relax, and you would go through your entire body to do that. Positive self-talk is just thinking about something positive that happened today and trying to keep it focused on really the immediate, like right now and not thinking too much about the past.
Tiana, could I add to that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So a tip that was given to me from a friend about self-talk is don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to your best friend or your children.
Yeah.
That has been a significant change for me as well as my kids when we've been focusing on our positive self-talk.
Yeah, I love that. Or even what you would want a friend to say to you. So if you're going through a hard time, think through what you would want a good friend or a parent, what would you want them to say to you if they were their most loving, kind self? And say that to yourself as well. So kind of that concept of reparenting is kind of trendy right now, but thinking through like, what would I want my mom to say to me in this moment if I couldn't talk to her or something? But thank you for adding that, Amanda. I really love one of my favorites is this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is where at 5, you look around the room and look for 5 things that you can see. Then 4 is feel and identify 4 things that you can feel with your body. So it could be the chair you're sitting on, the cup you're holding, anything, 4 things that you can feel. 3 is 3 things that you can hear. 2 things that you can smell. And then 1 thing that you can taste. So this is like my go-to strategy for kids in an anxiety attack. This quickly brings them out of an anxiety or a panic attack and helps them focus on something right now, brings them into the present moment. It engages their brain so that they have to respond in a certain way and they can't get trapped in that cycle of what's happening in their brain. I love this strategy. It's one of my favorites. And for littler kids, you could start smaller. You could do the 3, 2, 1 instead, and maybe just do 3 things you can see, 2 that you can feel, and 1 that you can hear to start it smaller. They might have a harder time coming up with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but one of my favorites. Any questions on these ones? Okay. All right, distraction. Distraction can help us focus on something else so that we can temporarily regulate ourselves. We don't want to use distraction all of the time because that can turn into avoidance, but sometimes it's necessary to distract so that we can then come back to the task at hand. So I'm thinking about kids in school. They might get frustrated with a kid bugging them in class. It might be helpful for them to engage in a distraction strategy so that then they can come back to class and be more successful in their classroom. So these are, I mean, you can read the list. These are some examples. Some of these obviously won't work in a school setting, but I feel like a lot of the work that I did in schools was distracting in order to then re-engage. So I think distraction is good as long as we're not avoiding consequences. So there always needs to be, like, if there was behavior that needs to be addressed, it needs to be followed through with as an adult. And then you would always want to have a conversation too about what happened when they were dysregulated and what did that feel like to them, so that we're not just avoiding those things and pushing them away, but we're strategically using these distraction strategies to help get us through that difficult moment to then be able to engage in it again. Questions about this one? Or any things that you would add? What are there any things that you would add to this category that you do in schools? Move along. All right, physical one. So physical strategies are designed to help with rebalancing. Like I said before, movement can calm you or energize you. So there are some activities that make us feel like we've got tons of energy, and then some activities that help us kind of calm our bodies and help us to be still. So we're going to talk about small and big physical movements. They both have benefits, and this might be a choice of the kid, what feels best in their body. So we'll talk about some of those as well. Looks like there is a chat. What about taken away from the iPad? Do you mean like if the iPad is like taking away the iPad as the consequence for behavior? I'm not sure what you mean by the question. Okay, we'll come back to that. If you want to just jump in the call, you can do that. So let's see. So small physical movements involve like fine motor skills. So squeezing something, shredding up paper, popping bubble wrap, doing something with your hands. That could be like popping your knuckles. I do that a lot. It could be just wiggling your fingers and your toes, massaging the tips of your fingers. So it can be really calming to just, I don't know if you guys can see me with my background, but if you just massage the tip of each of your fingers, it can actually have a really calming effect and activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is fascinating. You could line up the fingertips on both of your hands and press the fingertips together, almost like a progressive muscle relaxation. So pressing hard and then relaxing. You can put your feet on the ground and push your feet down using your legs. So tightening kind of your quad muscles and then relaxing. You can massage your temples, rolling different parts of your body. So rolling your shoulders, rolling your neck, rolling your elbows. You could just move around different parts of your body. Flex and pointing your feet like in the picture. So that's just engaging a small part of your body, but in a small movement way. Any questions about these small physical movements? I had a student one year that was like obsessed with tearing paper. And they didn't ever do it angrily, but it was almost just like the repetitive movement and the sound was really calming to them. So it wasn't like they were ripping it up and like furiously trying to destroy something. It was just like a really calming strategy for them. Something else that would fit in this category might be like coloring a picture, doodling on something, because that's small movements with your wrist. Oh yeah, Andrea, that's great. So some kids, I found that I can get kids to talk when I give them something to do with their hands. It's like they forget that they're talking and they have something else to focus on. So any sort of fidgets, like fidgets got really popular the last couple of years, but fidget toys like the little popper toys, anything to kind of keep their hands moving. It could be Play-Doh or Silly-Putty, or it could be anything that kind of gets that small movement going. It's great. Okay, and then the big physical movements is moving your body in bigger ways. So going for a walk, exercising, dancing, punching a safe surface like a pillow or a boxing, like a punching bag, balancing on a Basu ball. That's this little guy right here. That requires quite a lot of concentration. Doing some sort of obstacle course, swinging. I had a student my first year as a social worker. She had autism and her favorite calming strategy was to swing. And the swinging helped to regulate her. It was like magic. Almost instantly she regulated with swinging. Some kids fiddle with their hair when they're frustrated. Some parents really find that irritating and try to stop them. Should they? I don't know that they should try to stop them. I guess if they were pulling their hair out, they might want to address that. But I would want to talk with the parents to find out what was bothering them so much about the fiddling with the hair, and see if there was something that we could work through with the parents. If it was calming to the child to do that, or if that was like a stress response and that was like their cue to the parents that they were stressed and maybe they needed to engage in a different activity to kind of regulate themselves. So I would want to ask a little bit more questions and see kind of what the hair fiddling is about. I know a lot of people, even grown-ups, we touch our hair, we touch our face, we do a lot of things to fidget when we are feeling nervous or frustrated or something. So any questions on these big physical movements? Some other ideas are jump rope, trampoline, riding a scooter or a bike, doing stretches or yoga or skipping. Skipping sometimes requires a little bit more brain power because you have to figure out the pattern to skip in. Tug of war. And these are big physical movements that typically engage your whole body. I had a student that, in order to help them regulate, we would give them, like the teacher would give them really heavy books and say, hey, I need you to take these books to the office. The office didn't need those books, but it was a strategy to engage their body using big physical movements. So having to use their muscles to hold these books and walk them to the office. And this kid, he thought that he was like the most important person for getting to take the books to the office. And the physical act of walking and carrying something heavy was really regulating and calmed him down really quickly. So that's another fun idea. But again, that would require a lot of planning up front to make sure that they know the expectation, how to get to the office. You wouldn't do this with just any kid, but could be a strategy.
Tiana, I was going to chime in. That was actually one of the kids I work with, a 504 accommodation. When he would totally dysregulated, the teacher would be like, here's this note, go take it to the secretary, which she just stapled an empty piece of paper and sent it to the secretary. And hey, while you're dropping it off, stop and get a drink of water at the drinking fountain before you come back to class. And that made a significant difference for the student and the teacher, because then he was like calming down outside of the classroom.
Yeah, I love that. I think if you have kids running away from class, that might be a clue that they need some big physical movements involved in their activities during the day, and trying to build those in proactively could be helpful in preventing some of that, like running away or really active bodies in their chairs. I'm thinking about littler kids, but so engaging some sort of big physical movements could help with reducing some of those like really active movements in the classroom. That's why recess and play is so important. And taking away recess is like the worst thing possible. Heidi says, what are some ideas for kids that have to be talking all the time and loud talking too? You could do some sort of like, I've seen strategies where they write down all of their thoughts, because sometimes they just need to get their thoughts out. So depending on the age of the kid, you could have them like give them a challenge to write down all of the thoughts and then spend 5 minutes letting them read all of their thoughts to you when it's a more appropriate time. I've seen some people do that. I would say reinforcing the positive behavior that you want to see and trying to ignore the negative behavior as much as possible. So if they're talking a lot and then you find that they're quietly working on a paper, doing big praises for those quiet moments and being specific with your praise. So saying, oh my gosh, you are doing such a good job sitting quietly and doing your paper. I love it when you do that. I so appreciate that. Giving lots of praise for that positive behavior and trying to ignore some of those more disruptive, not harmful, like he's not hurting anybody, so it doesn't necessarily need to be addressed every time, but trying to give your selective attention to what you want to see improving. Want to have any other ideas on that one about addressing kids that are talking a lot and really loud talking? That's a hard one in a classroom because they need to be quiet so the teacher can hear, or the teacher can talk and other students can hear. But so it's hard to not give attention to that moment. But the more positive praise you can give to the behavior you want to see, you'll see that more often typically. All right, the last category is processing strategies. So these are designed to help work through thoughts and feelings about challenging situations. So I mentioned in the beginning that we wouldn't want to engage in these processing strategies when a student is highly dysregulated. because the part of their brain that can process and engage in thought has likely been deactivated when they are in their fight or flight response mode, or their autonomic nervous system is activated. So we would want to engage in some of those physical grounding activities to try to engage their five senses a little bit, try to de-escalate them a little bit, and then engage in some of these processing activities. These are some ideas. So identifying the thoughts and feelings is one strategy you can use, and these are some different ways that you can do that. This top one is the feelings book. So you can have them identify a core set of feelings, so happy, sad, angry, whatever, and then have them identify things that make them happy. And this is an example for little kids, but you could do this for teenagers as well, and they would just write them out. Or if they like drawing, they can draw too. But so identifying what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what makes them angry as a strategy to help them start to recognize their own emotions. The thermometer is really common strategy as well, helping them identify how much they feel something, or how angry it makes them feel, or how happy it makes them feel, or where are they at on the scale. This is just another way to help them get in touch with what they are feeling and how much of it they are feeling. Another strategy that I've seen that helps is helping kids recognize their emotions in terms of color. So helping them recognize, like, maybe when I'm feeling, and that can be just a fun way to say, I'm feeling yellow today. And that just might mean that they're feeling cheerful and happy and not worried about anything. But maybe when they're feeling red, they're feeling angry and frustrated. So helping connect their feelings to a color can be helpful. Where you feel it in your body is really great strategy to help them recognize the sensations that are attached to emotion. A lot of times we don't even realize that our bodies have sensations when we are feeling emotions. So being able to connect that emotion back to a sensation can be really helpful to kids. The sensation in their body might be their first clue that they're going to be feeling an emotion. Maybe their heart starts racing, but they haven't actually realized that they're feeling nervous yet. So being able to recognize the heart racing is just a clue that helps them understand what might be happening. Understanding triggers is really important. Understanding what it is that makes them have the thoughts that cause them to engage in a certain behavior. So when my teacher doesn't answer me when my hand is raised, that really makes me feel frustrated. Or when my friends don't share their crayons with me, or when nobody plays with me on the playground, having them try to figure out what it is that is kind of starting those emotions in their mind and their bodies. Then for older kids, this tracking my stress could be really helpful. So having them think through what was the trigger, how did they respond to that emotion, what were their thoughts about the situation can be a strategy. I would say for older kids, it might be a little bit harder for younger kids, but any questions on these identifying thoughts and feelings strategies?
Just quickly on the triggers conversation, I feel like that one comes up often. So I've heard varying opinions, like, that identifying triggers can be problematic, but obviously that's the opposite of the conversation. So when you're working with them on triggers, does that kind of come as a package with, like, and this is what you could do to calm yourself down, or what do you do in those situations?
Yeah, I guess it would depend on where I jumped into the situation. If a kid was already escalated and I'm working to help them regulate, I would help them regulate first, and then I would go back after they're regulated and they can kind of think clearly through what happened. I would try to take them back through the storyline to help me figure out what it was that set them off, partly, but then also to help them recognize what it is that really frustrates them or makes them angry. So that would be how I would address it that way. If I was doing like preventative work and we were just having a normal session and I was meeting with a kid, I might talk about like, I would maybe have them first identify their feelings and what makes them feel those things, and then help them connect those to real life situations that they have in the past become triggered by. I think this is just an educational piece, and I would do it as a way of processing through what happened and then tying in, like you said, Amanda, those calming strategies. So if this happens, what are some alternative strategies you could use? And then that's where these like strategy choices come in. Like, does it feel better in your body if you take deep breaths? Or would it be helpful when your teacher doesn't call on you to maybe put your head down and rest for a second and try to clear your brain? Or something attached to when that does happen, what's your plan? So I think that can be really empowering to them to know they know what to do if that does happen again.
May I ask you a question?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, this is LaRue Wade. I have a student, second grade in a behavior unit, and say the first half of the year he was getting some very extreme behaviors. You know, throwing things, knocking chairs over, jumping on cabinets. You know, running, hitting, kicking. You know, a little bit of everything. The teacher was so smart, and this goes on with a lot of the things that you have been teaching here today, is that she decided to allow him to wear earphones and listen to music. And since then, he only has maybe one escalation every couple of weeks now. And now he doesn't even need the music, and he is has learned to calm himself down a little bit. But the one thing that was interesting to me is that after he would escalate and he'd be calm, the teacher would go back and try to process with him, and he doesn't remember at all his escalation. So I'm just wondering if that is seen very much, where kids get so upset that they don't remember their escalation, or is this just a just this one kid maybe?
I wouldn't say he's the only one. I would say that could be happening for a lot of kids, is that they get so escalated that so when we go into our fight or flight mode, which he was in, when he gets so escalated, he's throwing things, he's screaming, he's yelling, he is in fight or flight. Something has happened where he is feeling threatened in some way. So sometimes when that happens, well, all the time when that happens, the prefrontal cortex of our brain goes offline, and our brain's only task in that moment is to get us to safety. So when our prefrontal cortex is not engaged, it makes it really hard for our hippocampus, which is our memory part of our brain, to be engaged as well. So he might really not remember it, or be able to process it. Like, his body remembers that dysregulation. His body is going to remember what it felt like to have his heart racing and be really, really scared or really, really angry. But he might not have the words to process that. And especially being in second grade, he really might not have the words to understand exactly what he was doing. In that case, I would maybe, as a teacher, say, like, narrate for him afterwards what happened. So she could say something like, when I asked you to put the papers in the box, you got really upset. You started screaming at me. You started throwing the chairs. And then I gave you the headphones and you started relaxing. So really being like a sportscaster and kind of telling him exactly what happened and the steps along the way might be a step towards helping him kind of recognize the things that he's doing when he is getting really escalated. I don't know if that helps, but I think it is really possible that he doesn't have language for what he was doing.
You know, I thought that at first too, but this kid is so smart. He shouldn't even be in second grade. He should be beyond that. He really is very, very smart, but he's only in that unit because of behaviors, and that's it. Otherwise, he has no academic problems at all. And so I'm glad to hear what you said about narrating back, though, because the teacher has been wondering what might be a help for that. So we'll sit and talk about it, and I appreciate the suggestion.
Yeah, and it could be that he could be feeling shame or guilt about what he did, and it might be hard for him to actually express that part of his behavior. And she could ask that he write a story about what happened, and maybe he could process through it that way, or draw pictures about what happened. Sometimes when kids go silent, it might mean that they are feeling shame or guilt and they don't want to verbalize their own behaviors.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, looks like there are some things in the chat. Annie asked about I think Annie used direct message me. I hope it's okay if I share with the group, but she just said, how do you help a child who's responding to unfairness? Gosh, little kids, their like entire world is based on fairness. So if something is perceived as unfair, it like rocks their whole world. I have seen a lot of teachers do like a Band-Aid lesson, like where they say, okay, you hit your head and it's bleeding, you have a cough, you have a broken arm, and I'm going to give everyone a Band-Aid. And that's not fair, right? Everybody well, it is fair because everyone got a Band-Aid, but what people actually need is not what's fair. People actually need what they need to be successful. So the kid with the broken arm would need a cast, the kid with the head bonk would need maybe a bandage, the person with a cough might need some cough medicine. So what's fair is actually giving everybody what they need to be successful. So that's something I've seen some teachers use as like a part of their lesson when they're having lots of their kids talk about what's fair and what's not fair. Jesse, yes, he could be, in LaRue's story, he could be disassociating, and that could be causing him to have a difficult time identifying and remembering what he was doing. All right, the last section of the, oh, yeah.
So I have an adult son that disassociates, and it was really hard for me to understand it. But when he comes back, after being angry, and he's grown up a lot. This is when he was a kid. But he would come back and I'd say, you said these things to me, or you did this, and he wouldn't remember. So he could be dissociating. And I mean, my son was always, I'm really, really sorry. So my son's very intelligent. He's, but he does dissociate. And so intelligent kids can do that. And that might be him really telling the truth. I don't remember. He gets so angry. So I think, that's a good suggestion too.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Dawn. I think that's really helpful to hear a firsthand experience of that. Okay, so the final concept.
Can I ask a question one more time?
Yes, LaRue, please.
Dawn,
I love questions. I don't want to be the only one talking.
Okay, so Dawn, with your experience, did your son understand that he was disassociating when he was young doing it?
No, not until therapy. He had I was one of those moms that was not in denial that there were problems going on with my children. And I also had lots of foster children I was raising at the same time. And so I knew a lot about different behaviors. And so we got him into therapy, and he learned that he was doing that. And so then he was able to identify, with that as well. But like I said, the little kid probably has nothing to do with his intelligence. It has to do with kind of where he goes when he's angry. And so he may not be old enough to say, hi, I'm not all the way in. It's kind of like they remove themselves from the situation, and they're so angry and so afraid or so hurt or whatever they're feeling. Yeah, I would read up on that. Of course we can't diagnose him, but if he truly doesn't remember, that could be what's happening, what's going on. I had a hard time with my son believing that at first. I was just like, you were so rude. And now he's 22 and he still has issues at times with that, but not being rude to me because he doesn't live at home anymore and he loves me. So yeah. So, but yeah, I really, whoever wrote that in the comment at the beginning, we don't know if that's what he's doing, but that's a really good option for maybe why he doesn't remember.
Okay.
Because you bet.
And I think the grounding techniques or any way to engage your senses is a great strategy to support a kid who goes somewhere else in their mind when they're really dysregulated. So bringing them back to the present moment using their 5 senses in some way is a really great strategy for trying to engage them back into the present moment. So even if he's not disassociating, he's clearly dysregulated when he's going into those kind of fits of rage. So I would use those strategies regardless of whether or not he was clinically disassociating or not. But great questions. I love it when there are specific examples of kids and we can kind of work through possible solutions. So that's great. So this is the last slide that I have for processing. So the first one was identifying thoughts and feelings, and the next step is to be able to express them in some way. So it's great to be able to identify them, but sometimes we need to get them out to try to not let them consume our thoughts and our feelings. So you can do this through journaling. There are lots of different really great journal prompts. So in a perfect world, I would like this to happen, or I'd want my life to look like this could be a great strategy, or writing what's bothering you and ripping it up and throwing it away as a symbol of like letting it go and getting it out of your brain, using I wish or I statements. I wish that she would do this, or I wish that I could do this. Or I statements, I feel really frustrated when this happens, or I feel really happy when my mom does this. What I can control versus what I can't control is a really powerful thing for kids. I think this kind of plays into that fairness question as well. Like, it's really empowering to know what is in my control and focusing on those rather than all of the things I can't control. Kids are often they have little control sometimes in their lives, especially the kids that you all are working with. Probably like so much of their lives are in the hands of grown-ups and they don't have any sort of autonomy, focusing on what they can control. And often that means they can control their thoughts and they can control their actions related to circumstances in their life. And then one good thing is that kind of that strategy of focusing on the positive. They could have a journal where they write one good thing that happened in the day and reflect and focus on that one good thing. You could also write a letter to someone that they love about how much they love them, or somebody that really hurt them, and expressing those feelings about how they hurt them and what that did to them can kind of be a cathartic, getting it out of their body and into words. Talking to someone that you trust, creating a playlist of music that helps them feel understood or helps them feel regulated in some way. They could draw a comic strip or draw what they had wished would happen in a situation. Or I've used this worry box idea as well, where they can just stuff all their worries into the box when they pop up as a container for those worries. So they don't have to worry about them staying in their brain. They can get them out and put them in a box and they are contained. The idea of containing worries and containing stress is really helpful. It doesn't feel like the thoughts or worries are going to take over because they have a place and they can go somewhere else. That's a really good strategy that's actually used with, I don't know if you guys are familiar with EMDR. There's a concept in EMDR and mindfulness in that about putting away your stresses or your worries into a safe place and like almost like containing them until you have the time and the space to deal with them. So again, we are not talking about avoidance. We're talking about putting them in a safe place until you can bring them up and process through them safely. So the worry box is a good one. Any other ideas on how you get kids to express their thoughts and feelings? I've had lots of kids who will not talk to me, but they will write down on in some sort of way what's bothering them. So lots of kids like whiteboards because then they can erase it and there's no record of it, and because they don't want me to hold on to something, or they like the idea of being able to write it and then be able to erase it. So whiteboards are a good strategy. Sometimes writing something feels a lot less intimidating than trying to speak it or put words to it verbally. Right, that is the end of my presentation. I hope that you were able to get some tangible strategies that you can use with kids. Again, I would focus on that pre-work, really being intentional about teaching these strategies when kids are calm, having a plan for when they might use them, giving them lots of choice. In the book, in the actual workbook, there's like a checklist of all of these items. So you can, as you're teaching kids, have them self-identify like what they like, and having those be the strategies that they pick when they are dysregulated or they need some support getting calm. So involving choice and autonomy as much as possible is super helpful. So thank you guys for being a great audience.
Thank you, Tiana. Real quick, I wanted to circle back on the one about the iPad. Would a solution be like maybe the big physical, like trying to get the kid to go for a walk, because then you've got to put the iPad down and it's, you kind of change the conversation, or is that avoidance?
Let me go back. I can't remember what the follow-up comment was.
Let's see. So, it just jumped. Let's see. What about taking the iPad away? Yes. How can the student be distracted to take the iPad away?
In that case, I would have really clear boundaries to say the iPad time is done. I'm going to take the iPad, and then working on regulation strategies to deal with that discomfort of having the iPad taken away. I think by like just swapping out one thing for another and trying to distract them and not, it almost feels like trying to trick them and like trying to not let them notice that the iPad is taken away, okay. is kind of avoiding the discomfort of not having the iPad. So I would be very clear and say iPad time is done, and then deal with whatever you need to when the dysregulation happens. My toddler also hates when the iPad is taken away, and there's often a meltdown that ensues. So I have to work myself up to like stay calm and regulated, because I know the tantrum is coming, but we're working on proactive strategies to kind of help. So you could do like a timer to say there's 5 minutes left, 3 minutes left, 1 minute left, the time is done, take it away. I think warning and preparation is really helpful in those circumstances. You could prompt and say, the faster you can give me the iPad, the more time we'll have to do this other fun thing that's coming. But a lot of times taking away the iPad means something less fun is about to happen. So there's discomfort there.
But I like your pre-work of like, telling them you get 5 minutes, and then when they're down to 1 minute. I think I kind of instinctively did that with my toddlers, because I'd be like, okay, you can have X amount of time, but what I failed myself on was the countdown. So.
Yeah, my toddler hates a physical timer. Like if I set a timer on my phone and put it in front of him, he loses his mind, and he hates that. So I just have to be the timekeeper and be the one that says your time is done. But I do give him those warnings. I'll say 5 minutes, 3 minutes. Well, with him, he's only 3. So I'll say 3 minutes and then 1 minute, and then we're done. And there's still meltdowns that happen. He gets to the 1 and he's like, wait a minute, I need 1 more. And that's okay. That's okay to be, it's okay for them to be upset that their activity that they really love is ending. And I think the validation of those feelings is really helpful. We didn't talk about that at all, but validating those feelings of discomfort is really helpful for kids to know that they're not bad for feeling things. It's normal for them to feel upset or frustrated or whatever they're feeling. But then talking about appropriate behaviors for when those feelings do come up.
Great. Well, thank you, Tiana. I appreciate you taking time this morning and putting together a presentation for us. Okay, so now I will turn time over to Trina, man, the T's today, and I practiced so I'd say names right today. So Trina, you're good to take it away.
Great, thank you so much for the nice introduction and for allowing me to share some resources on our Educating Youth in State Care webpage and our guidebook. Can all of you see my screen?
Yes, I'm seeing your website with the kids jumping at the top.
Okay, because I can't see it. So, okay, so the Educating Youth in State Care has a lot of really valuable resources on it. One of the nice things about it is if you go to this tab, it'll bring you to a interactive map that if you click on it, it'll give you the YIC directors, the CASA coordinators, the Child and Family Services, and the JJS folks. So on this map are all 26 districts that receive youth in custody funds. So this is a really nice resource. Also, if you go down further to the resources tab, there is information here on the best interest determination, which is basically the federal regulation that talks about making sure that youth stay in their home schools, because we know that every time a youth changes schools, they lose 3 to 6 months academically. So this is just kind of nice to share with new mentors and new people that are new to YIC on the importance of keeping youth in their home schools. Always thinking about safety as well. So the guidebook is really where I wanted to spend most of the time. If you click here, it's a pretty lengthy guidebook, but it has a lot of really great information in it. Let's see. So the guide is designed to give you useful information about how to provide services for youth in state care, to help you as school administrators, child protection officials, juvenile justice officials, court officials, caregivers, and other community partners to work together on behalf of the youth. It explains the process when agency services intersect. It gives you resources and contact information for key players in each agency. It brings clarity to the roles that each agency and individuals play in educating youth in state care. And it'll really help you maximize opportunities for youth and their chances to succeed. So another feature of this guidebook is if you click on any of the headings, any of the blue parts, it'll take you to that section, which is really nice. You can also click on any of the graphics and it'll take it to a larger one that you can print in its PDF. So that's another really nice feature. Also, what's really nice about this is at the very end, sorry for going so fast through this. So all of the websites that are listed and hyperlinked within the document are also listed here. So for instance, this is the DCFS guideline, so you can click on any of these. We also have contact information for DCFS, JJS, the juvenile courts, which is listed by district, and it'll have the judge, the address, phone number. And then here is our youth in custody program directory. So our directors. And then this is really nice as well. Let's see if I can. Is a glossary of terms for, if you're like me when I started, a lot of terms were being thrown out that I wasn't quite sure what they meant. So for instance, what is a guardian ad litem? What's a GAL? What does court appointed special advocates? What's a CASA? What does that mean? So this is a really nice appendix if you get caught up on trying to understand what terms mean. And then also Here is just a copy of the data sharing statute, which allows us to share data from agency to agency. So it's just a nice reference point at the end of this guidebook. And then also a copy of the education court report. Some of you might be familiar with this report. It goes to our juvenile court judges as every 3 months they request this information. So some of you may be asked from your case managers or case workers to help fill out some of this information in the education court report. Let's see. The going back function kind of. And then here at the very bottom on the main page is just a list of the contacts. So we have our State Board of Education people, we have our Department of Human Services, and our juvenile court. So it's just a really great web page that has contact information, and then the guidebook has really great information, for instance, about helping youth obtain a driver's license, or who can I share data with, etc. So that's about it. I just wanted to give a quick demo. Amanda does have a, let's see, a Google slide that has 6 slides in it that she'll share with you. And if you double click on any of those slides, the hyperlink to that will show up on the bottom left, just as a quick guide if you can't remember how I got to some of these different pages.
Thank you, Trina. And we have a minute, and sorry to put you on the spot, but I just saw it. I wondered if you could talk to the data piece just a little bit.
In regards to?
Just what's there. I don't think a lot of us even realize the data that you populate is there.
Yes, so I work with the Management Information Center, and they're with the Department of Human Services, and we have an MOU with the Utah State Board of Education where we receive data twice a year. So in the winter and then after the school year ends, and we receive data for DCFS, JJS, and high fidelity wraparound, and it focuses on graduation data, chronic absenteeism, GPA, mobility, school moves, race and ethnicity. As many of you know, our data is always going to be a year old. So whenever I present data, it'll never be the current year. So I've been currently just presenting on the 2018-2019 data and the 2019-2020 data. And what it really shows is just sort of a good picture of over the years, whether or not youth in custody are improving. One of the things that we've noticed is with proficiency, particularly with our JJS youth, proficiency scores are pretty low in all 3 categories. So that's something that we're looking at. And I'd be happy to come back and do a data report if that's helpful. It's a pretty short, straightforward, 10 slides that focus on those components I just mentioned. But this is something that's been new in the recent years, that we've been able to actually collect the data and show how our youth in custody and receiving services youth are doing academically.
Thank you. I will put that on the future webinar list.
And my hope too is that I'm expanding this web page. So I'm hoping that at some point there'll be links to individual youth in custody programs in the individual districts. And I also hope to have a data dashboard so that at any point folks can go on and click on the data dashboard. So this web page was always evolving. Oh, and one thing I wanted to mention about the directory and the guidebook, as we know, the second we publish a directory, it's already outdated. So people change jobs, they move around, they get promoted. So I understand, and I try my best to keep those updated, but you will see in there some old directors listed or old special ed folks. So I apologize for that. Managing directories could be a full-time job. So thank you, everybody.
Trina,
Uh-huh.
may I ask you a question? I guess I'm just taking up everybody's time today. You mentioned there that on this website, it guides you to have the kids stay in their home schools and such, and I haven't been a youth and care mentor for too awfully many years, but I just got kids that are staying in their home school. Their parents know where they're at. And this is the very first time that's happened. I have never had kids at all that have not been brought basically from another district and put somewhere else. And so I'm wondering whose guideline is that? And are they going to be doing something different?
Yeah, so this is under the Every Student Succeeds Act. It's a federal regulation. And what often happens is kids go into foster care and the family automatically enrolls the youth in the school that the other kids are attending. But research has shown that, if there are no safety concerns, and transportation can never be the reason why they move schools. Research has showed that keeping students in their home school, because they've already got those connections, they're changing homes, a lot is changing for them. So stability wise, keeping them in their home school is always the best thing to do.
So this is just a guideline. It's not a law to keep them in their home school, or what?
It's not a law. However, so DCFS does have the final call as far as moving youth. And this is really just a guideline. I think the biggest barrier of why students get moved is transportation. It's just not feasible for families, especially if it's a distance thing, right? If a youth was placed 90 miles from their home school, is it feasible to transport them? So there are factors to consider, which is listed on that right hand side of the document. So the bottom, length of commute, students' attachment to the school, meaningful relationships, how the transfer will impact the student. So this is, I think, just a really good reminder, an important note for foster families to consider.
So is this something that the DCFS caseworkers will be looking at also, this website and seeing all of this information?
Yep.
I think this is great. I think that you've put together something that's very valuable. So thank you.
Yeah, and this is actually, so I created this a couple of years ago, and at the bottom, you'll notice that Kyla Clark, she's with DCFS, she's the state level contact. So if you wanted other information, she is our state level contact, and she is with DCFS.
But Trina, just so I'm understanding, like I'm getting the feeling that the process is like standard. So they would normally just consider all of these things as they're deciding where the student would go. And I'm guessing that LaRue just happens to work with some students that those criteria didn't, work for the student, and moving them made the most sense. So am I understanding that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other
there is a House bill, and Dawn is on here, so I'm not at my computer. I have it on my shared drive, but there is a House bill that was passed in Utah addressing this, and on occasion we need to use that and give it to an administrator to justify why an out of boundary in-state care student needs a permit to attend school out of their boundary, and we have to give them a gentle, polite reminder of why that is. So if I have a team member from Granite sitting at their computer that could give LaRue
I'm
that
here,
House bill.
Heather.
Okay.
Heather, what's it called? Is it under forms?
It's in our shared drive, and it's House Bill. I don't even know. And maybe Amanda can pull it better than me. But I want to say it's House Bill 1 something. I don't know. LaRue, maybe we can get that to you. I could give it to Amanda and Amanda could get it to you. It's good to have that so that if even if a caseworker would like to have a student stay at a school and you get a little pushback from an administrator, it's nice to have a copy of this that you can send a really polite email and attach this House Bill. And it typically eliminates that pushback.
Oh, thank you, Heather.
Heather, was that tied into some of the juvenile justice reform changes, or was it a standalone bill?
I'm looking for it right now, but I may not get it in time.
Okay, we can share that out afterward. Like Heather said, we can add that into the follow-up.
Send that to you.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, did we have any other questions for Trina, or want to see any other pieces of the handbook or website? Annie, I think you're trying to tell us, but you're on mute, my friend. I'm not able to hear you, Annie. I'm not sure if it's a connection. Maybe
There I go.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. The handbook is huge, and I'm really, really interested in sitting down and just munching my way through it and finding things. So when you asked, is there something else you want to say? I said, yes, I do, but I'll have to do it on my own.
And if you have any questions for me, please feel free to contact me. And I think Amanda will share out those slides, and it has my contact at the end. So.
Yes, and I even went a step further, Trina. I added you to the Check and Connect directory this last round. So you're
great. Thank you.
You're right with us with the USBE folks. I just want more folks to know that you're there and you're a resource for us. Because yes, Trina knows all things YIC and the things between the agencies, which is something I struggle with because I'm so education focused. So I really appreciate Trina's help with the broader picture. So
thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, give it a second here. Okay, I'm not seeing anything pop up in the chat. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking time this morning to learn from Tiana and Trina. And for living through my technical difficulties at the first of the webinar. I'm selfishly happy to say that I forgot to push record, so that is not captured for time and all eternity, but I appreciate everybody who lived through it this morning. With the follow-up, I will send the link to the mindfulness I shared, since I don't think that got captured. Anyway, have a wonderful day. And like Trina and Tiana both said, we're here if you guys have questions after the fact. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.